So I recently had the opportunity to interview Chang. He is a Facebook software engineer, and I asked him all of the questions really that I personally wanted to know the answers to, but I asked them in a general way that I hope will be of service to you as well. So this video is going to be split up into two parts. The first part will be beginning shortly, and the second part will come out probably in about a week after the first. Each is going to be about a half an hour long, maybe a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, depending on how I cut it up. And if in post, so I really should have edited the videos before I recorded this little clip, it might be 3 parts long, and if that happens to be the case, then you will know when I release the third part. Without further ado, let's get into the interview. But first, a word from our sponsor. Nope, just kidding. No sponsors, no subscribers. It's a bad joke. I'll just cut to Chris.
Alright, hey guys, Alex Bianchi, and if you are new to my channel because this popped up in your recommended feed, I figured a decent amount of you might have some new exposure. I am a computer science student and an aspiring software engineer, and today I am hosting Chang, who is a Facebook software engineer and founder of Sui Careers, and I'm really happy to have him here. He went to the University of Waterloo. He is an established software engineer, and I'm sure he has a lot of great advice to give. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Alright, hey, what's up? I'm Chris, currently at Facebook, and also I created this new product called SuiCareers.com. It basically just teaches you the basics of data structures and algorithms, and it has a structured plan with all the coding interview questions alongside each topic. And it's one of the cheapest products on the market right now. And yeah.
Alright, so we'll get into Sui Careers in a minute, but I do want to go into your background. So I understand, so I know some of it, but the viewers don't, that you went to the University of Waterloo, but computer science, you weren't some Mark Zuckerberg programming at 2 years old. You got into the field more as a career, which I find really intriguing, especially with all of the buzz around how your work has to be your passion and all of that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you got into software engineering, computer science.
Yeah, so basically when I was in high school, as an Asian, you only have pretty much a few choices for career. Well, that'll make your parents happy. And I just decided to go with computer science because I knew that software engineers could get paid a lot of money straight out of an undergraduate degree, and you didn't have to do a lot of grad school or any medical school or law school if you have been a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah, so did you enter as a computer science student, or did you take a couple of years to kind of explore what you wanted to do?
Right, so basically when you're in Canada, you have to enter as a computer science student. You have to decide on your major when you apply to schools. So yeah, I had to make the choice right in my last year of high school. And once I made that decision, I just went all in on it.
Awesome, yeah, go all in, you did. In college, because I'm kind of working up the timeline here. In college, how were you as a student? I understand you did the co-op program, so that's a lot of internships. Were you getting good grades? What was your relationship like with academia?
Yeah, so basically my first year of school, I had decent grades, around 85 out of 100. But then towards the end and the middle, while I was searching for internships, the grades kind of slipped a bit. So yeah, it wasn't great, but that was because I think I just had poor time management, trying to balance finding internships and also working on schoolwork and staying focused with schoolwork. And after you've gotten some big name internships, you don't really want to do school anymore. You kind of just want to keep working, and it's kind of hard to find that motivation to actually do well in school because you know you'll be able to get pretty good jobs regardless.
Yeah, and speaking of big name internships, you definitely had a few. So do you want to, and you talk a lot about this on your YouTube channel, so I highly encourage the viewers to go check that out. and see all the videos he's made on every internship he had. But if you want to talk briefly about where you interned and kind of how you got into that.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I first started off working at a startup. That was in my first year of university. Oh yeah, by the way, I did 6 internships. That was because it was part of the co-op program at Waterloo. You do 5 years of school and 6 internships without any summer breaks or anything like that. My first internship was at a small startup. That's pretty much where I learned the ropes, learned how to code, and then I slowly worked at larger companies. I worked at a Series B company at the time called Toast. They're actually IPOing at $20 billion sometime soon, I heard on the news. And then I worked at big companies like Bloomberg, Facebook, Google, and I worked at this one unicorn called Flexport.
When it came to the big internships, how did it feel working at Facebook or Google compared to, say, a small startup? Was it a pretty similar process and it just had this big name associated with it, or do they kind of, is there a reason that they have that big name, that brand behind them?
Just the interview process, or do you want me to talk about the experience?
Both. The interview process, the experience, just talk the internship overall. Whatever you think is most applicable.
Yeah. So basically, the interview process was all relatively similar. You just need to solve a bunch of algorithms, data structure questions, and then for the experience, I'd say working at a big company, especially for internships, you're given a lot of garbage projects or like not super important projects. Whereas if you intern at a startup, especially a startup that's less than 10 people, you'll be given a lot more responsibility. You'll be able to build out features that get shipped within the first month. And overall, I just think there's a lot less bureaucracy associated with working at startups. And bigger companies, you just got to go through so many different hoops just to get some little things done.
Yeah, that's fair enough. When it comes to internships, when it comes to applying for internships, as someone who doesn't have that many internships behind him, or they're just getting started, do you think that it's possible to go straight for the big names, or is there kind of value and you have to go take it step by step, get into a startup first, and then see where it goes from there?
Ideally, like in the ideal world, I'd say go work at a big company first, get it on your resume, and then applying to other jobs would be a lot easier. But for me, that wasn't the case. I had to work my way up to that big name, and if I were to move companies after, I would probably go to a smaller startup because I think that suits my personality more, just because I like building things, moving faster, and not really having to deal with all this office politics when you work with a big work at a big company.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. And doing these internships in college, that you mentioned how your grades started to slip, you get these big internships, and all of a sudden school doesn't really seem to matter too much. And I can totally understand how that kind of senioritis might kick in. Do you value the CS education that you received, or do you think college was more of just kind of a place where you could go to meet people and make connections, and it got you to Facebook, which is great, but as far as the CS classes themselves are concerned, what do you how much value do you think they provided?
So I think the CS courses provide a good knowledge to have in your back pocket, just so if you don't understand anything when you're working in the real world, you can always go back and understand everything from the basics. But to be effective in the workplace, I don't think you really need to know all the theory behind all the stuff you learn in computer science degrees. And I do think, like you said, the most valuable part of going to university and doing a CS degree is the network you meet, all the friends you meet, the alumni, and having that, I guess, like brand name school on your resume, so that people later, like as your career develops, people that have graduated from your school may tend to help you. And overall, I think anywhere you go, whether you work at Facebook or work at a startup, it's always the people that you meet that are the most valuable, because those are the people that are going to help you advance your career or teach you new things. And for me, I think the culture at Waterloo really did play a part in me getting these jobs, just because everybody was searching for internships and it just became a norm. It was like your lunchtime talk, it was your talk during dinner, or whenever you're just hanging out or just walking to class. You're just talking about how to get jobs, what are the tricks, and once you live and breathe that, it kind of makes it a lot easier, or you just kind of just follow the trend that everybody is doing.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand how there might be there's definitely value in being in an environment where the status quo is working at a top tech company. It kind of definitely sets you on the trajectory for success. I know that for me, when I was first breaking into computer science, something that I did was I just listened to a lot of YouTube videos about everything, because I was in a non-tech school. No one knew how to code. No one knew that. No one knew. I went to my career center and I was like, hey, so I'm learning how to code. I'm really interested in software engineering internships. And they were like, what are these projects that you have on your resume? And I was kind of just like, they're really important according to all the research I've done. And they were like, oh, I don't know. So clearly not a tech school, not a school meant for software engineers, because that's such a big part of your resume. Point being, I made sure to surround myself with talking about internships and CS and software engineering, mainly just by listening to YouTube videos, walking to class, just doing my stuff, like podcasts, just listening to videos. So there's definitely a way to get that level of immersion, but I don't think it's comparable to being on a campus like University of Waterloo.
Yeah, for sure. I think like the saying goes, you're the average of your 5 closest friends, and I do think that plays a part in a lot of what we do.
Mm-hmm. So in college and now more in Facebook, actually before I get to that question, let's talk about, so you do all these internships, you get your grades in college. What was the transition like from being an intern to working as a full-time software engineer? Does a lot of stuff change, or is it a pretty gradual process as far as responsibility is concerned and things of that sort?
Yeah, so I think in general, it's a pretty gradual process. As an intern, you're only there for 3 or 4 months. You're given like a small side project, and it's very contained. You don't have to work with too many other teams. You don't have to work with too many of the other team members on your team. But once you go full-time, you have to own up to a certain part of the project. You need to find opportunities to improve whatever you're working on, whether you're working on a product, you want to help grow the product, build new features that will get more users. If you're working on infrastructure, you want to find opportunities to improve the system, like reduce latency, reduce memory, basically make it more efficient. And I guess like it's kind of like a startup or like a business where the project you're working on, whether it's a product or some system that you're working on, like a service, that's like that's like your main business, and you're just finding ways to improve it and get more users to use it. And you're basically doing everything for that, and all the projects you build out or features you build out for your product or service, you're essentially just going to have to own up to it for the whole time you're there.
Mm-hmm. Something that I think gets talked about a lot on YouTube and all of that is how to get your internship, which is obviously such a massive deal, something I'm involved with now, something you're involved with through Sweet Careers. Once you're in the internship, though, how do you excel? How do you show the company that you're a good intern? How do you get that return offer?
So I think the number one tip is when you first get there, even though if you don't know anything, always ask a lot of questions. Just make sure you can understand the requirements of what you need to do, understand the code base so that you can make changes really quickly, And I think the number one skill, just like almost any job, is communication. And that's the best way to show that you're a good intern or a good employee. If you're able to communicate, everything else will follow. You'll understand the requirements better, you'll understand the code base better, and you can make more changes and work a lot faster.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, communication is key. Hopefully, this YouTube channel helps on my resume. Recruiters, if you're watching this, I have good communication. See, I have a YouTube channel. So that's definitely good advice on excelling in internships. Something in that kind of college to actually working transition that I find interesting is the people that come from non-CS backgrounds. So whether that's still in STEM, it's a math degree, it's a physics degree, it's electrical engineering, or it's out of STEM, it's a philosophy degree. How many people did you encounter at Facebook who came from these non-traditional backgrounds? Maybe they went to a coding boot camp, maybe they taught themselves afterwards. And what do you think about that? Because something for me, I love philosophy. I'm really interested in it. And there was a hot minute there where I was considering, I said, I'll major in philosophy. I'll code a boatload when I'm not in my classes. Like, that'll be what I do on the side. And I'll still get one of those banging internships and careers afterwards. But I get to major in philosophy and have fun studying that while I'm in college.
Yeah, so in terms of how many people I meet, I'd say just from personal experience, like less than 5%. But it is possible. I know quite a few. I know someone who's done a physics major. I know someone who's done a stats major. I know someone who's done a chemical engineering major. And actually one of my mentors at the very first company I worked at, Care Guide, the startup, my mentor, or the CTO actually that I worked with, he was a philosophy major. But I think the trend is they have to really love coding to be able to get a job in software engineering. Because if you don't really, really love coding, then it'll be hard to just do it on the side, because there's no external factors like school, projects, and I guess like friends and classmates to really force you to code. But if you think you can do it on the side, then I think it's worth it. But if you don't think that you can make that work without that external pressure from school, friends, or just like your social network pushing you to find an internship, then I don't think it's very doable. Like for me, if I were to have done, let's say, another major like physics or math, I 100% wouldn't be able to get a job in computer science, just because I don't think I love coding that much. It kind of was a career thing for me, career choice, but I think that's okay. I think there's a lot of computer science people that are working at these big companies very similar to me.
Where do you think they go? What's the breakout from software engineering and computer science? Say you really not necessarily you, just in general, you've said you know people. You major in computer science, you get your software engineering job, you don't exactly fall in love with software engineering. Hey, that's okay. It happens. Probably going to happen to most of us, which I think about it a lot. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be a software engineer. But then I think like 9 out of 10 people probably switch their careers in their 20s. So I just want to be a software engineer right now. We'll see where this goes. But where do you think people follow up after software engineering? Is there a related industry or career that has a lot of transferable skills? Have you noticed anything like that? A common interest amongst software engineers, if you will?
Yeah, I think those who aren't super, super interested and are kind of lazy to make another switch, they just accept it. They just do their 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 7 sometimes. It's not crazy amount of hours. And they just treat it as a job. They spend their weekends doing their hobbies. They spend their evenings doing their hobbies, just like a normal person. But if you're talking about breakout, like other careers that they might step into, I'd say Maybe product manager is one, where you deal more with people and less with code. Maybe entrepreneurship. I guess people like building products and then they just end up building their own stuff and launching that instead. But in general, I'd say most people just kind of accept it and they do their 9 to 5 job. It's a good salary, it's a good lifestyle, and you pretty much won't get that kind of lifestyle and salary elsewhere. They give you all the free food, so many benefits. Even when you're working from home, there's just so many benefits and stipends they give you for like home workout equipment, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of all that, what has it been like during COVID? Now that you don't, what are on the company side? Are they just saving money? They're like, awesome, we don't have to give these guys free food. Have they turned some of that budget into more stipends? What's the deal been with that?
So the office, I think they still need to clean it, maintain it. But I guess they are saving money on food. But for big companies like Google, Facebook, saving money on food, I don't think will really affect their earnings because it's just a small amount compared to how much money they make, just because they're such profitable businesses. But I don't think there's been that many stipends. So there was this wellness stipend at Facebook of $720 you could use. That was just for gym memberships or like yoga classes, things like that. But they extended it out to home workout equipment. And that was the one perk I actually enjoyed. So I bought myself some running shoes, pull-up bars, just things like that. Nothing too crazy.
All right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with what you're saying of, looking at other careers, there's really nothing like software engineering. There's just...
Yeah.
Like, straight out of college, you're making what? It's definitely crazy. It's definitely part of why I'm so attracted to it, and a lot of others are too.
But you also enjoy software engineering, right? So
yeah,
I think that's also a good sign, because having passion towards what you do as a career is also very important. I think it could get you a lot farther, just because if you enjoy it and you even enjoy doing it in your spare time, then it's obviously better than someone who doesn't really enjoy it and they only do it for their 9 to 5 job.
Of course, yeah. Something that I am really curious in for myself is the potential for PhDs or master's degrees, which I know in software engineering, it's like, why do you need a master's degree? Just go get your job. I really like learning. I like school. It might not be worth it monetarily unless you go into, say, research. So did you have any experience with researchers at Facebook? I know they don't necessarily mix with just the brute software engineers as much, but what do you know about research in these top tech companies?
So I actually don't know too much about the research scientists, but I know a lot of them work in machine learning and those sorts of things. But from the brief moments I've had brief encounters with research scientists, what they've told me is that research scientist is pretty similar to being a software engineering at Facebook. But I don't know if that was just for their role. So I can't really generalize for the whole research scientist role.
Okay, yeah, fair enough, valid. And then now, do you want to talk about your new I guess you would call it your new company, your new product, Sweet Careers. What made you decide to build that? How's it doing so far in its first few days launched? What is the product? You can really feel free to go into it if you want.
All right, I don't think there's that much. It's just right now it's just okay, so sweetcareers.com is a product that I built recently. I just wanted to create a structured program for people to learn data structures and algorithms from scratch. It has videos to help you visualize what's happening in algorithms and data structures, plus a set of practice problems for you to work on after you've watched through the videos. Pretty simple, straightforward. structured plan. That's it.
And then you have the live coding environment with the test cases, right? That's live.
Yeah, that's all live working. It's pretty cool, and I think the UI is really slick. I spent some time making it and polishing it up to make it look really nice and feel very similar to something like VS Code.
Yeah, awesome. So